Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes and today you join me from the cockpit of Winston, my girlfriend Kat's plastic Ford Fiesta. No lift shift. Don't tell Kat. In my last video I dropped Maude, my MOREDOOR Mk2 Escort, off to my other garage so that work can begin on her next week while I'm off work. I wasn't going to bother going to the garage today, but there's one thing that I mentioned in yesterday's video that I was thinking about doing, and now I've decided that I'm definitely going to do it. It involves my favourite modification that you can do to a rear-wheel drive Escort. Of course, I'm talking about the L.S.D, or limited slip differential. For the last 6 months or so, I've noticed that the diff is slightly less aggressive in the way that it locks up because the clutch plates in the L.S.D do wear out eventually. It still drifts, but it's a little bit tamer than it was. More recently, I've noticed an oil leak coming from the pinion seal of the diff, which has got worse over the last week or so. So a rebuild was on the cards eventually anyway, and I thought while Maude's off the road, I may as well get it done now. As well as having the pinion seal replaced and the clutch plates in the L.S.D, I'm going to give the diff a full rebuild. So I'm going to replace every bearing. I'm not sure if there's any other seals other than the pinion seal, but if there is, they're going to get replaced as well. And luckily, all those parts are available from one of my favourite companies, BURTON Power. So I'm going to go down there tomorrow and pick those bits up rather than waiting for the parts to get posted to me. Then on the way back from BURTON Power, I'm going to stop off at my diff man and drop the diff and all the parts off to him, and hopefully he'll be able to get the job done so that I can pick the diff up at the end of next week, which means I'll be able to get Maude straight back on the road once I've got round to replacing the sump and doing all the other jobs that I want to do. If not, it's not a massive deal because Kat's away in Las Vegas for a week, so I'll be able to use Winston all next week as well as the beginning of the week after if I need to. And then if I do get desperate, I can always rob the spare diff out of Esther just so that I can get Maude back on the road until I get my L.S.D back. So the plan today is to go around the garage and remove Maude's diff. And while I'm around there, I'll probably give myself a bit of a head start with the sump replacement by disconnecting the front suspension and the steering. So I'm going to crank the tunes up now and make my way to the garage, and I'll catch up with you when I get there.
She loves me, why the hell she loves me.
Right, so I've just got round the garage. It's really hot today, and like a numpty, I'm wearing long sleeves and jeans, but it is what it is. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is jack Maude up, and I'm going to remove all 4 wheels. But before I do that, I'm going to turn her around so that she's facing the garage, which I think will make life easier later on in the week when I need to get the hoist out to hold the engine up while I replace the sump. Now before I can remove the diff, I need to remove the half shafts. So I need to remove the brake drum, undo the bolts that hold the drive shaft into the axle, then I can bolt a wheel onto these wheel studs and then basically hammer the wheel to pull the half shaft out of the diff. So as it happened, I was actually able to just pull this out without bolting a wheel to it and whacking it off. Now I was planning that when I do get the diff rebuilt to get another set of half shafts and have a fresh set of bearings put on them, but I can't afford to do that at the moment. The reason I can't just put a new set of bearings on these half shafts is because they're actually slightly different. The distance between the bearing and this hub is slightly different length on each side. I want to try and get a pair of half shafts that are the shorter size out of the 2 that I've got, because they'll give more clearance for my banded steels, because I'm actually planning on dropping the rear end of the car by another ½ inch by putting a block in between the leaf spring and the saddle. This car is already lowered 2 inches because the actual leaf springs themselves have been decambered, which is, in my opinion, the best way to lower the car. But I just want to be a little bit lower at the back, so I am planning to put ½ inch block in there as well. And the bearings that I've got on these half shafts at the moment do leak, but I'll just put some sealer on once I put it back together. Now, I was going to try and show you the difference between these half shafts. Now this is the one that I thought was longer from there to there compared to this one, but it seems like this bearing isn't fully seated. Now I might be wrong, but it definitely looks like there's a gap between the bearing and the shoulder that I'm guessing it's supposed to lean against. So I don't know if maybe I can get hold of a scaffold bar and then use that to slide over the shaft and then see if I can whack that bearing down a bit further. Because if I can, that means that these half shafts are identical, and then I'll just need to change the bearings at some point, which would be better. And one thing worth noting about your half shafts, make sure you put them back in the same side that they came out of. Obviously these splines get put under tension when you're driving the car, so they do slightly kink, and if you put them in the opposite side, then you're going to be forcing them to kink the opposite way, which can actually snap that spline piece off. So this one needs to go back in the passenger side. And I'll just leave them sticking out like that, so that they're not actually pressed into the diff, and then I'll be able to remove the diff from the axle casing. Right, so the next stage is to disconnect the prop shaft from the diff, which is just a case of undoing 4 bolts. And then I'll be ready to remove the diff from the axle casing. Now, obviously the axle's full of diff oil, and there's no drain plug on the bottom of these diffs or these axles. So what I'm going to do is just loosen the nuts that hold the diff into the axle casing, and then that will leave a gap for the oil to drain out. I should have cracked these nuts off before I jacked the car up, so this is probably going to be fun. Right, so Maude's diff is now out, and this diff has a Tranex Salisbury type L.S.D fitted. It's a clutch type L.S.D. I'm not going to go into loads of detail about how an L.S.D works, but it is the best modification you can do to a rear-wheel drive Escort. I would go as far as saying I would rather have a small engine and an L.S.D than have a big engine and a normal diff. Basically, it aids traction, allows you to get the power to the road a lot better, and then if you do want to really give it stick and drift, it means that you're able to do that as well, and you're able to control the slides a lot better. Now the pinion seal is in this end, and basically it's just been leaking oil down from this flange, and it's got a lot worse over the last week or so. Now I'm going to give this a little clean with brake cleaner, and then I'm going to wrap it up and put it in a box, and then it'll be ready to take to the diff man tomorrow. Right, so before I put the diff back in, once it's rebuilt, I'm going to give the axle casing a thorough clean out, and obviously just make sure that this gasket face is nice and clean. But for now, I'm just going to cover it up with something so that it doesn't get shit in there while the car's sitting around waiting. And annoyingly, I've just used my last bit of plastic sheet to wrap the diff up. So I think I'm just going to have to use a bin liner, and I'll just gaffer tape it to the axle casing. Right, so I've got the axle casing all covered up now. So now I'm going to put the half shafts back into the casing, put the bolts in loosely just so I know where they are, put the brake drums back on, and then I can crack on with some other bits. Right, so that's everything put back together. I'm not going to put the wheels back on. I'll just put them in my garage. Just need to put these prop shaft bolts somewhere where I won't lose them. And I think these diff nuts I'm going to replace, because I'm pretty sure Burton Power sell them, and I'll be going there tomorrow. Now, before I crack on with anything else, there is one thing I forgot to mention yesterday about the problem I had with the alternator fan. A couple of times since I fitted this alternator from Retro Ford, the fan was bending outwards and it started rubbing on the belt and the bracket. And basically, I took the alternator apart and straightened out the fan and then refitted the alternator to the car. Now, obviously, where the fan had been bent, straightened, that had obviously weakened it, and then that is why the other day it went bang and failed on me. I will be ringing Dave at Retro Ford at some point to let him know what happened to the fan on my alternator. I'm not going to be demanding a refund off him or anything. Although I have got a couple of holes in the bonnet now, I'm not really bothered. That's the whole point of having a rat-look drift car at the end of the day. Right, what I'm going to do now is drain the coolant out of the engine as well as the oil. Because obviously later on in the week I'm going to be replacing the oil sump, so I'll need to drain the oil anyway. And I'm going to be lowering the engine down so that I can get the gearbox off, so I can figure out what the rattle is inside the bell housing, and that means I'm going to need to remove the coolant pipe that goes from the heater matrix to the water rail. So I might as well just drain the fluids out now, and then that's one less thing to do later on in the week. Right, so I've got the coolant and the oil drained. What I'm going to do now is disconnect that coolant hose at the back of the engine, because that's really annoying to do, so I'll get that out of the way now. Right, what I'm going to do now is start disconnecting some of the front suspension, and it's all stuff that I've showed on the channel before, so I'll just show you what I've done once I've done it. Right, so I've removed the anti-roll bar, I've disconnected the track rod ends from the steering arms, and I've disconnected the track control arms from the cross member. So I've just given myself a bit of a head start on the sump job. I think that's all I'm going to be doing today. Daz and Nath have just turned up, so I'm just going to chill out here with them for a bit and then pack up and then go home. I'm going to continue this video tomorrow though, when I'm going to be going down to Burton Power. So I'll see you in a sec. Hello, so it's now the next day, and me and Kat are going on a bit of a road trip to Burton Power, but first Kat needs to go and get her nails done, so while she's doing that I'm going to get a cheeky Subway. Yeah, I really wanted a steak and cheese wrap, but I had no wraps left, so went for the teriyaki chicken on herb and cheese bread, and of course the obligatory 3 double chocolate cookies. I might even save one of them for Kat, we'll see. Let's have a butcher's at your nails then. Got your present.
Oh, thank you. That's what I got you.
Yeah!
Travel goodies.
Right, so now it's time to hit the road and head down to Burton Power, which is about an hour's drive from here. I've just had a call from Carlo, the precision engineer, and the spreader plates for Maude's new sump are ready. He's actually really busy at the moment, and he couldn't guarantee that they'd be done this week. So if you're watching, Carlo, thank you so much for doing them so quickly. Right, so we've arrived at Burton Power. Now, apart from McDonald's, this is probably the company that takes most of my money each year, and I always bang on about them on the channel. But if you haven't already done so, make sure you get on their mailing list and get a catalogue. I'll leave a link to their website in the description of this video. Right, while matey's collecting all my diff parts, I'm gonna have a look around their shop. It's so cool when you see engine with the block cut out, so you can see all the pistons and rods and crank inside. Hey Kat, this would look great in the front room. Right, so before we hit the road and head down to see the guy that's going to be rebuilding my diff, I just thought I'd show you the parts. Right, so got all the bearings, 4 in total, Timken bearings as well, pretty good. In here we have the clutch plates for the L.S.D. This is the pinion seal, that's a new pinion nut, and that is a crush washer. And while I was here, I also got a new base gasket for the DGV carburettor and a DGV carburettor service kit as well. Because I think it's about time I took my carburettor apart and gave it a little bit of a clean out. Every now and again it seems to die when you're going around the corner, so I think there might be a bit of shit in the carb or something, so that's another thing I'm planning to do at some point this week. Also picked up another catalogue, because I don't think I've got a copy for my garage. And if you're into modifying your Ford, you need to get yourself one of these. Packed full of technical information, and it obviously also shows all the parts that Burton Power sell. Right, so now it's time to head down to the diff man, who is based in Watford. Hopefully he's open. Right, so here we are at Southern Axle Services in Watford. I've been coming here for a good few years now whenever I need some work done on my diff. The last job he done for me was to change the crown wheel and pinion ratio in my diff, and before that he replaced the clutch plates in my L.S.D as well. So yeah, if you need any work done to your diff or your rear axle and you're anywhere near Watford, make sure you check out Southern Axle Services, and I'll leave his contact details in the description of this video. Right, so that is Maude's L.S.D dropped off to the diff man. He said he might be able to get the job done within the next few days, which I'm really happy about. So Maude should be back on the road and ready to drift by the end of the week. Kat's going to Las Vegas tomorrow, so I think I'm going to spend the rest of the day with her rather than messing around with cars. So I'm going to end this video here. If you did think it was any good, please do give it a thumbs up and a share. If you thought it was shit, give it a thumbs down. Click subscribe and activate the notification bell to be kept right up to date with any other videos that I post in the future. Make sure you check out my Facebook and my Instagram, and I'll leave the links you need for that in the description as well. Until next time, from me and from Kat, thanks for watching.